If you look at the news in the West, you probably hear the same old story about Africa. You hear about aid, poverty, or political trouble. But if you look at the data coming out of Beijing in 2026, you'll see a completely different story. To China, Africa isn't a problem to be fixed. It is the biggest opportunity of the century. While the United States and Europe have been pulling back their investments and worrying about risks, China has done the opposite. In 2025 alone, China's trade with Africa hit a record $348 billion, and its new infrastructure deals on the continent grew by nearly 300%. So why is China betting so much money where the West is afraid to go? Is it just about getting more oil and minerals? Or is China building a new world where they make the rules and the West is left behind? Today, we're going to look at the no-lecture policy that is winning over African leaders, why China is building the Internet of Africa, and why the US might wake up to find it has lost an entire continent. Let's get into it. No lectures, just bridges. To understand why China is winning, you have to look at the Western way of doing business. Usually, if an African country wants a loan from the West or the IMF, it comes with a long list of homework. They want to see new laws, political reforms, and a specific type of government. To a Western politician, that sounds like good values. But to an African leader who needs a bridge built today so farmers can get their crops to the city, it feels like a lecture. China's pitch is much simpler. They call it non-interference. Basically, China says, we don't care how you run your country. You want a bridge? We'll build the bridge. You want a railway? Let's talk about the engineering. This respect for sovereignty is a huge deal. It allows African nations to modernize on their own terms without feeling like they are being told what to do by their old colonial masters. In 2026, this has made China the partner of choice for almost every growing nation in the global south. But if you turn on the news in London or DC, you'll hear a very different story, the infamous debt trap. The narrative is everywhere. The idea that China is a predatory lender waiting to seize African ports and railways the moment a payment is late. It's a terrifying story. But in 2026, the data is starting to make that narrative look a bit desperate. While the West warns about Chinese debt, they rarely mention that African nations actually owe 3 times more to Western banks, oil traders, and asset managers than they do to Beijing. And get this, those Western private lenders often charge double the interest rates that China does. It's a classic case of projection. Washington is warning Africa about a trap, while their own banks are the ones cashing the biggest checks. When African leaders look at the bill, they see that China is actually the one at the table restructuring loans and deferring payments, while the moral West is still demanding its 10% interest in the middle of a global crisis. The new 3, the green leapfrog. For a long time, critics said China only cared about digging up oil or copper. But if you look at the projects being signed in 2025 and 2026, the story has changed. China is now helping Africa leapfrog straight into the future of green energy. China is the world leader in what they call the new 3, electric vehicles, lithium batteries, and solar panels. Now they are bringing that green machine to Africa. While the West is still debating climate pledges, Chinese companies are actually on the ground building Africa's largest solar farms and EV assembly plants. Why does this matter? Because most of Africa still lacks stable electricity. By building solar grids and wind farms, China isn't just helping, they are creating a massive new market for their own tech. If China builds the power grid, they get to sell the batteries and the cars that plug into it. It's a perfect loop that keeps their factories busy and brings electricity to millions for the first time. The digital Silk Road, the hidden grid. Here's something most people miss. China isn't just building roads for cars. They are building the roads for the internet. By 2026, Chinese companies like Huawei and ZTE have built over 70% of the 4G and 5G networks in Africa. This is the digital Silk Road. When a young entrepreneur in Lagos or Nairobi starts a business, they are likely using a Chinese-built network, a Chinese-made phone, and even Chinese mobile payment apps. China realized that if you build the digital operating system of a continent, you become indispensable. The West often talks about data security, but for someone who has never had high-speed internet before, a 5G tower that actually works is much more important than a warning from Washington. By providing the tech that people actually use every day, China is building a deep level of trust and digital loyalty that will last for decades. The Yuan Revolution. For over 50 years, the US dollar has been the king of global trade. But in 2026, that is starting to change in Africa. Because China is Africa's biggest trading partner, many countries are tired of having to buy US dollars just to trade with Beijing. In the last year, we've seen a massive shift, where countries like Kenya and Ethiopia have started settling their trade directly in Chinese yuan. This is a huge win for both sides. It makes trade cheaper and faster, and it protects African economies from the roller coaster of the US dollar. For China, this is a masterstroke. They are creating a world where the US dollar is no longer the only option, and Africa is the testing ground for this new financial reality. Investing in people, not just projects. Finally, China is winning because they are playing the long game with people. At the big China-Africa Summit in late 2024, China didn't just promise more money, they promised jobs and education. China has officially become the #1 destination for African students, beating out the US and the UK. Every year, thousands of African engineers and doctors are trained in Chinese universities. When they go back home, they aren't just bringing back a degree, they are bringing back Chinese know-how and a friendship with Beijing. In 2026, China is also sending hundreds of medical teams and agricultural experts to rural African villages. They are teaching farmers how to get higher yields using Chinese technology. While Western aid often goes to consultants and fancy offices, Chinese aid is often visible on the ground in the hands of the people. This people-to-people strategy is building a foundation of support that is very hard for the West to break. The conclusion, a shared future. So why is China investing more than the West? Because they don't see Africa as a charity case or a threat. They see it as a partner. China remembers what it was like to be a developing nation struggling to build its own roads and grids. They are using that experience to help Africa modernize in a way that feels mutual and respectful. The West is playing a 4-year game, worried about the next election. China is playing a 100-year game, building the infrastructure, the digital networks, and the human relationships that will define the rest of the century. But what do you think? Is China's no-strings model the best way to help Africa grow? Or is the West right to be worried about China's growing influence? Tell us what you think in the comments below. If you found this video interesting, hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the future of our world.